Welcome back to Knowledge Hive. I'm your host, Leisa Sims, CEO of Knowledge Hive. And today we're going to talk about something that keeps a lot of us up at night, the fear of irrelevance. That moment when your industry shifts underneath your feet and you wonder if your skills, your experience, and your business, even your career, are about to be left behind. I've lived through this and I've seen others live through this too. So today we're going to break it down, talk about some stories, some of the warning signs, and the strategies to make sure you stay ahead, no matter how fast things are changing. If you've ever dreamed of stepping away from the 9 to 5, or you're already on your consulting path but really want to level up and become a solopreneur, this episode is for you. But before I get started, I want to share my, well, that's cool story, thanks to Knowledge Hive. If this is the first time you've joined me, let me do the 30-second pitch here on what is Knowledge Hive after all, and what do you guys do? Well, Knowledge Hive is an on-demand marketplace for top-tier professionals that are willing to share what they know with others, businesses, startups, individuals, etc., that need their expertise. If you're looking for a little help, then you are what we call a seeker. And if you're offering help, then you are a hiver on our platform. So picture this. You're a brand new startup with a great product, poured everything into building it, time, money, sleepless nights, and now you're ready to take it to market. But there's a challenge. Your competitors have been around for decades. They have the budgets in place to stay ahead of you. They have the brand recognition. They dominate the conversation. So how do you, the underdog, not just survive, but actually win in this type of a marketplace? Here's a story of how one executive freelancer stepping in as a chief marketing officer helped a startup stand out, disrupt the market, and steal some market share from the very companies everyone thought were untouchable. When she was first contacted on Knowledge Hive by the startup to start their project, the CMO saw that what she saw where with many new companies are struggling with, they're trying to play the same rules as the big guys. Generic messaging, broad campaigns, and a we do everything promise. The problem? That approach left them invisible, just another small fish in a really, really very big pond. She knew they couldn't outspend the competition, but they could at least outsmart them. Her first move, redefine the story. She helped the founder zero in on a niche, one specific pain point that their product solved better than anyone else. Then she rebuilt the messaging from the ground up, clear, confident, and bold. No jargon, no fluff, just a sharp, differentiated voice in a sea of sameness. From there, she brought in modern data-driven tactics. Think account-based marketing targeting the top 200 dream clients with laser precision, thought leadership, content that actually spoke to IT decision makers in their language, and a social presence that didn't try to copy the giants, but instead positioned the startup as a fearless challenger brand. And she didn't stop at marketing. She worked with the sales team for the customer, giving them insights that turn their conversations from features and price to actual problems and solutions. The result, at the end of her project, the startup was landing contracts with mid-sized enterprises that had never given them a second glance before. Industry analysts started mentioning their names right along some of the companies 10 times their size. And the real sign of success, the big players started responding with counter campaigns because they knew this little startup had become a threat. The CEO of the seeker that put their project on Knowledge Hive added the following review to the CMO's profile. He said, hiring a fractional CMO was one of the smartest decisions we ever made. She gave us the strategy, the focus, and the confidence to not just compete, but to win against companies who had been here long before us. That's the power of an executive freelancer. Sometimes it's not about having the biggest budget or the longest track record. Sometimes it's about having the right leader at the right time, the right strategy. Because in business, disruption isn't just about technology. It's about the story. It's about positioning, and it's about daring to play a different game. Okay, back to the podcast topic for today. What is the nature of the fear of falling behind? Let's start with a story that you've probably heard about, Kodak. Back in 1975, one of their engineers invented the very first digital camera, but their leadership team shelved it. They worried it would kill their film business. Fast forward a few decades, digital photography took over and Kodak went bankrupt. And it wasn't because they lacked innovation, but because they ignored it. And I've seen this up close too. Early in my career, I worked for a large technology provider. That was around the same time that something new popped up in the marketplace, which was this weird concept called voice over IP. I pulled all the data, I showed the case studies, and I talked to the leadership and I said, this isn't a fad, this is the future. They said, there's no way customers are going to buy this. They didn't move, they didn't invest. And just a few years later, companies like Cisco, Skype, and even Zoom starting at that time built their empire around voice over IP. The company I work for, they're gone. They don't exist anymore. So that was my wake-up call. Irrelevance doesn't always happen because you don't know what's coming. Sometimes the signs are right there, but the fear of complacency keeps you from acting. So how do industries evolve overnight? Industries can flip overnight because of three things: technology, consumer behavior, and global shifts. Take ChatGPT. It launched at the end of 2022. Within 2 months, it had 100 million users, the fastest growth of any consumer app at that time. I talked with a copywriter who lost half her clients almost overnight because they wanted to try AI instead. But here's the twist. She pivoted. She started positioning herself as an AI content strategist, editing AI drafts, training teams, and making content actually sound human that started in AI. Within 6 months, she doubled her income revenue. That's the difference. The market shifted and she shifted with it. And you've got to recognize early the warning signs of these changes. So here's how you know irrelevance is creeping in. Your clients stop asking you the same questions. New competitors undercut your pricing with technology leverage, for instance. Or the demand for your traditional services just fades. A consultant I know in financial services saw this happen. Clients weren't calling her for basic advice anymore. They were using fintech applications instead. She didn't quit. She rebranded as a fintech transformation consultant. Now she advises banks on how to integrate those very applications. She went from being sidelined to being indispensable. So here are some strategies maybe to stay ahead. Okay. How do you stay relevant when everything around you keeps evolving? First, adopt a lifetime learning mindset. The shelf life of skills today is 5 years. For tech skills, it's closer to 2.5. One engineer I knew in his 60s signed up for a coding boot camp. When I asked him why, he said, because my grandkids will grow up in a world where coding is like reading, and I don't want to be illiterate. Second, scan the horizon, read outside your lane. A healthcare consultant I know subscribed to AI ethics journals. When hospitals suddenly needed guidance on AI compliance, she was already prepared. And, third, maybe experiment small. Netflix didn't jump from DVDs to streaming overnight. They tested in 2007, refined it, then they scaled. You can do the same with your services. Run a pilot, test an AI tool, get early feedback, and then reposition your value. A graphics designer I coached used to say, I make logos. Now he says, I help brands differentiate in an AI-driven world. Same skill, reframed. And finally, build community intelligence. Harvard Business Review found professionals in strong networks are 3 times more likely to adapt successfully. I've seen it. In mastermind groups, one consultant says, I'm losing clients to AI. And another person in the same group says, here's how I turned that into a new service. That kind of collaboration accelerates adoption. Also, just kind of thinking through this on the human side, how do we wrap our brains around this? Irrelevance is one of those things we don't like to talk about out loud. It's not like burnout or stress or even failure. Those all have language around them, support groups, frameworks. Irrelevance is quieter. It sneaks up on you. And when it does, it doesn't just touch your career, it touches your identity. Think about it. Fear is usually the first emotion to show up. Fear of being left behind. Fear that your best work is already behind you and that the world is speeding ahead and you can't keep up. Fear that no one will really need what you bring to the table anymore. And there's that deeper fear that maybe no one will even notice if you step back. And then, as fear lingers, shame often joins in. Shame doesn't just whisper, it accuses, it tells you this is your fault. You should have stayed sharper. You shouldn't have seen this coming. Everyone else seems to be adapting. Why not you? That's the voice of shame. And if you felt it, you know how heavy it is. Shame changes the way we show up. Suddenly you're in the room, but you're holding back. You censor yourself before you speak. You scroll through updates about other folks and measure yourself against them, usually finding yourself smaller. Shame just doesn't say you've fallen behind, it says you are behind. And when you fear and shame mix together, that's when paralysis often steps in. You stop moving. You stop trying. You wait. Because trying something new feels risky. And speaking up feels like exposure. So you play it safe. You stay silent. You protect yourself by doing nothing. And yet, that's the cruel trap, because the longer you do nothing, the more irrelevant you feel. Irrelevance at its core is not about losing a job or a title or even an audience. It's about losing significance. It threatens one of the most basic human needs, the need to matter. And when we feel like we don't matter anymore, it cuts really deep. If you've ever felt that creeping sense of irrelevance, know this, you're not alone. Fear, shame, and paralysis are part of the emotional terrain, but they're not the end of the story. They're just the signal that something new is being asked of you. The real question is, will you answer it? Blockbuster is a perfect example. Netflix offered to sell to Blockbuster for $50 million, and Blockbuster said, why would anybody do that? They turned them down. And, basically they froze, they were paralyzed, they didn't act, and they don't exist anymore. That's what fear does. But here's the shift. Irrelevance isn't failure, it's feedback. It's the market telling you, evolve now. So let's bring it back. Kodak missed the digital evolution. Blockbuster froze on streaming. Went out of business. My own company dismissed evolving technology, and they're out of business, even when the data was right there in front of them. And I'll be honest, that experience shaped me. It taught me to never assume today's success guaranteed tomorrow's survival. Alvin Toffler said, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those that cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So here's my challenge for you. What's the voice over IP moment in your own career? What's the trend you've been ignoring? And what's one step you can take this week to lean in before it's too late? Remember, irrelevance isn't failure, it's feedback. And if you keep learning, adapting, and pivoting, you will not only stay relevant, you will stay essential. If this resonated with you, share it with a friend or a colleague. I'd also love to hear your freelance or consulting journey stories. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or at knowledgehive.co. And thanks for tuning in to Knowledge Hive. New episodes drop every week, so don't forget to subscribe. And if you haven't already, Go create a free profile on knowledgehive.co. And if you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover, drop it in the comments below. Until next time, we are Knowledge Hive, and we are Knowledge as a Service.